Thank you, viewers, for staying with us. You are viewing Youth Wednesday on Tobago Updates Television. And I'm not sure if Natalia and Dwayne shared the news, but we are on Digital Cable Network.
Yes.
We are there on channel 33. So if you have that as an option, you can check us out there. And it's my pleasure to co-host with Natalia this morning. And joining us, as we said before the break, is the Honourable Chief Secretary Farley Augustine with us. And of course, we're talking about elections right off the bat. We know that we are anticipating that date. And if it's not shared, we know that the law says it has to happen within a certain time. But the political parties have to be ready. They are getting ready. And of course, as we have the Chief Secretary with us, we must talk about the Tobago People's Party and where they are in their nomination process. So good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Good morning, Tobago. Happy to be here this morning.
All right, so we start off really hot. We have an addition of viewers this morning. Normally we'd be just on Flow and Amplia. So we thank you for being our first guest that will be on Digital Channel 33 this morning. My first question to you. Sister, well, Natalie said that we'll be jumping straight into the election conversation.
Right.
Where are we in the nomination process for elections? Or for your party?
So my party closed nominations on Friday last, and currently we doing the due diligence part of the process, because to qualify as a nominee you must be a member of the party. That's that's the basic criteria. So we checking our membership records against the nominations. We are verifying the signatures or the persons who co-signed to nominate these individuals, ensure that they in fact nominated the individuals and no one fraudulently misrepresented anyone in getting their nominations in. So once we have completed that, most likely today, by about lunchtime today, sometime this afternoon, or perhaps the latest tomorrow morning, we will declare who the nominees are. And right after the hectic weekend that we are coming up on, we will proceed into the screening process, which I suspect will take us a little longer than I anticipated, because from a cursory glance, we were somewhere around 55 nominations. Of course, that may go down if persons were duly nominated, but we're somewhere around 50, inching to 60, between 55 and 60 nominations. And so is to try to get that out. And then, of course, even as we go through the screening process, if it is felt that any of the districts coming up short, then we will ask the districts to reconsider and reopen in those particular districts, which is a normal part of the process. So the month of November will be a hotly contested month for us within the T.P.P. And that's because what we are seeing is quite a hot contest. There may only be about 2 areas that will probably be uncontested, maybe, from what I've seen so far, from the report I have received so far, but very hotly contested. Bethel is the most contested area, like seriously most contested area is Bethel. Second to that might be Bonaccord, Bonaccord, Canaan, and then it tapers off accordingly. But it's going to be quite competitive within the rank and file of the party.
And coming from within the rank and file of your party, what do you think accounts for this increase or the great numbers of persons offering themselves?
Well, to be honest, right now in Tobago, there is only one political organization that makes sense. We have one party that is a one-woman show. I don't know if they have a constitution. I don't know if they ever had internal elections. I don't know what democratic structures they have internally. Then we have another political organization, one that I was a part of. I'm not sure where they are in their process. I know that party has a constitution. In fact, I left one there, but I don't know what's happening in that process. And then we have our main competitors, or who we think is our main competitors. They went through a process quite hastily some months ago, and I think that might have been to serve someone's own political interest, but that's not my business. They went through their process and they picked some candidates. And I think the way Tobagonians are seeing it now is that the T.P.P is Tobago's only indigenous party that is focused only on Tobago. As in, we really could care less about how Trinidad chooses to do its business, but we focus primarily on Tobago and Tobago's people's business. And because of that, we have attracted a much larger following than any other at this time. Our membership rule is open and people can apply and join online. We have a very open door policy. So we're not very rigid in terms of who we accept as members of the organization. We believe that a political organization such as ours must be really and truly a coalition of the competent and the willing. We accept people who were members of other parties. In fact, you could walk out of another party today and join our party today. We don't have those hang-ups at all because it's open, it's all embracing, it's welcoming to all Tobagonians. We have quite a vociferous base, very opinionated base, who though they support strongly, have very strong opinions. And sometimes you see those strong opinions even online, some strong opinions about how things should be done. And we welcome that because it's a democratic organization. So we welcome criticisms internally. We welcome people having different opinions of how things should be done. We welcome people sometimes will call or message about who they think I should make a secretary there, who I should remove there, what I should do there, why didn't I do that? And that's welcome in our party. And so having a strong democratic organization, it is not top-down. It was built bottom-up. The party symbol, I am not even a signatory at EBC to the party's signal and symbols, sorry. I am nowhere there. That's the party, based on this constitution, is completely in charge of its symbol, its accounts, and all of that. Because I wanted an organization to be built based on democratic principles and based on the fundamental principle that the people are in charge. And we are in a season where we entering screening, and we use this term screening lightly, but I don't. Coming from a strong Christian background, when I hear screening, I think of the scripture that speaks to that time of harvest when the wheat and the tare grows together, and the wheat ought to be plucked up by the Lord of the harvest to allow the wheat to thrive and to grow. So for me, the screening process allows just that. Separating of sheep from the goats, and ensuring that which is best for Tobago is picked. And our screening process also is one where people get nominated. 6 people must endorse your nomination. Then the action groups or the district councils are asked to weigh in and to give an opinion and to rank the nominees based on their own assessment. Then they come to this screening process, which is an interview process. And then after all of that is done, then and only then the political leader has a say in terms of final scrutinizing of the would-be candidates. Of course, the Constitution allows the political leader to have a sort of a veto power, which is seldom used by me. I generally prefer if the candidates or the proposed candidates are not favorable, to send it back to the action groups for them to come back with some more suggestions instead of just saying no and handpicking someone. I always recommend sending it back. And more than that too, in our process, we also get simple things like police records. We do our own checks. We don't ask people to go and get a police record. We do our own checks with the intelligence community to see if any of the persons that submitted are people of interest, and all of those things we sort of scrutinize for in our process.
Right. Okay. All right. So I'm hearing a lot of characteristics that you'd like to see come out of your nominees. right? What I want to have a sneak peek into what you're looking forward to in terms of character from these people who are chosen. Now, this is your personal thing. It's not something that you all have on paper that says this person has to be this person. But what would you like to see from your team going forward as the TPP?
Right. So, in terms of the characteristics, that is pretty much decided by the public.
Oh.
And I have said to the team that I now lead, I say to them all the time, we are approaching a day when the people that we represent will ultimately be the judges of whether or not we should turn on the ballot paper. It's not automatic. And the characteristics I think people look for, characteristics like honesty, integrity, characteristics such as one's willingness to serve people, humility, the ability for people to talk to you anywhere. Simple things matter. Simple things matter. And I'll give you an example. The Blue Food ended perhaps like just about 8 p.m. thereabout. And I left there probably an hour and a half afterwards. People in the car waiting on me because people trying to have conversations about other things. I will go to a funeral and somebody will start the conversation by saying, well, I know now is not the time and place, but, and I will say, it's okay, share it with me. One of the characteristics I think Tobagonians want from their representatives is that ability to communicate with the area rep, regardless, wherever, whenever. Whether you're on the beach, whether you're out having dinner, whether you're just at a funeral, whether you're at a church service, whether you went to a christening or a wake or you went to a wedding, people must find you reachable. People must find you accessible. People must find that you are able to just talk to the person. When I have public days, the record I have is about 75 persons in a day. I have had public days that go past 11 p.m. in the night. I mean, now I learned that is perhaps not the most productive, so I try to cut it back to very small bits over a longer period of time instead of a large amount on single days. But you just have to constantly make yourself available for people to talk to you, especially in circumstances where reaching you via phone may not be the easiest. So when people see you, you should never be snobbish to people, and that's just some of the characteristics that people look for.
Okay, all right. So I mean, I know we have the Chief Secretary in the hot seat this morning, and I know a lot of our viewers probably want us to jump straight into those post-budget talks, especially with that increased allocation that was given to Tobago in over 44 years. I keep stressing on that. That's a long time to wait on extra money, just saying, right? So, you know, that burning question, what exactly are your priorities in terms of that allocation to Tobago?
Well, the good thing is next week we meet for 2 days, retreat style, and that includes the administrators, secretaries and assistant secretaries, those from the Department of Planning and other key technical officers within the THA, technical public servants. And that meeting is where we sit and we hammer out the priorities and assign monies. Now, the way the THA Act is written, it simply says that the THA will be allocated sums from the budget, and it should be placed in the fund account. Once it's placed in the fund account, it's up to the government of the day here in Tobago to determine how those monies are used and where they are allocated and what those priorities are. So that meeting next week is to determine what are those priorities across the fiscal year 2026. Fiscal year starts in October. The budget came a bit late, but the fiscal year starts in October and it will go until September next year. I can tell you immediately some of the priority areas that we are looking at, that we're already discussing, is the start of construction for Scarborough Secondary School as a long standing issue for the people of Tobago. And we think that now being allocated 5% of the budget, that should certainly be one of the things at the top of the list. We also look at what improvements we have and investments we have to make into the tourism sector. The tourism sector, to be quite honest with you, is a difficult area. Difficult in that we never really ever get enough money to run that sector. We are competing with islands that will spend $40 million US on just marketing. Generally, our entire tourism operation doesn't even reach $10 million US. And we're competing with territories that they're spending $40 million US on just marketing alone. We're not talking about what they pay for administrative fees, what they pay the workers, just marketing, where they do ads. And so sometimes people see ads for other countries on football T-shirts. Just placing an ad on the sleeve of a football T-shirt is upwards of £5 million. And that's a staggering amount when we consider what our budget is. And so we do the next best thing, which is to take people up from here. And people sometimes say, well, why are we sending people out and paying for people to leave? Well, that is far cheaper. We can't afford to pay for those big ticket items as other countries. So the cheaper thing to do is to take people from here, the dancers, the singers, the hoteliers and so on, and send them out and let them be good ambassadors to the island and see how many people they could bring in, and then we go out and we negotiate with the airlines, etc., etc., etc. So of course, the tourism sector is a priority. We also are prioritizing some public infrastructure. And yes, while one can compare and say, I drive on roads in Trinidad and they have roads worse than Tobago, I am not comparing us with what's worse. I'm comparing us with what's better.
Right.
And for me, our public infrastructure, including our roadways, that's something that we have to look at. And yes, Plucky sang in his soca song, "Wasa mash up the road, Trevor go fix it." But fixing it requires us prioritizing that now that we have some more fiscal space. And of course, there are some long-standing issues with some individuals, some families, some homes, things like retaining walls and drainage, because they were affected some years ago by inclement weather. So we want to treat with those things. Of course, we will prioritize areas like DATAS. DATAS is where we provide scholarships and bursaries. In fact, we always prioritize it. On average, we will get an allocation of around $500,000 for DATAS. And we will spend upwards of $5 million. So we always prioritize that. Gratuities, we always prioritize that. In fact, sometime next week or so, we will show you how we have spent more monies on gratuities than any other administration in the history of the THA. Education alone, we spend upwards of 12 million, 18 million on just gratuities in a single year. Notwithstanding, the allocation is normally closer to probably 7 million or so, 7 or 8 million. So it means that we are doubling up in some instances for some of these priority areas. But once we have gone through the retreat, we will return to the public and share what the priority areas are for the fiscal year. And at the end of the fiscal year, as we will do when we meet in November, we will explain to the public what we were able to do and where we fell short. Because sometimes you set the priorities, and as you go through the year, things happen and you're unable to complete it for varying reasons. And just an example, the fiscal year we had the oil spill. We had to circumvent plenty priorities because the oil spill became the priority. Coming out of COVID, we came into office in 2021, so we had to have the highest spend on school repairs in fiscal 2022 because schools were shut down for almost a 2-year period. So we had to spend more monies on, so sometimes the priority changes or shifts based on circumstances. But as we get to the end of the fiscal, we will let you know what we were able to achieve, where we fell short, and then of course the public gets to grade us on the performance based on the priorities we set.
All right. So I think that the chief has left us on somewhat of a cliffhanger, but of course we will hear more when we come back from a small break. So before we do so, Natalie, please encourage your viewers to share the live, share the live, share the live.
Welcome back, viewers, and thank you for staying with us. We are interviewing this morning the Honourable Chief Secretary, and right now we're talking about the budget, and we know a lot of you have been following the debate, listening to various forums, and we needed to have the Chief Sec to share with us, of course. And as we continue about budget, Chief Sec, I remember THA advisor describing the THA as a spending agency and not really having powers to run Tobago except for fifth schedule matters. When we look at the lack of the devolution of powers as it relates to now Tobago having more money, do you think it's going to be counterproductive? And I'm asking that, linking it to internal self-government.
Well, ultimately, greater autonomy is what is required for Tobago's development trajectory to go to dizzying new heights. Let me be clear. We could get all the monies in the world, not having autonomy and legal powers even over some of those fifth schedule items become very restrictive. And I'll give a simple example. People like to compare us with Grenada because we are similar in terms of geographical size. But if Grenada in the morning wants a direct flight to land in Grenada from a West African state, Grenada does not need to go and ask anybody in any other island to do so. Their government simply sign on the dotted line and it happens. And so they could just move. When I negotiate, or when we negotiate with airlines, and I say we are negotiating with airlines, civil aviation jumps up and say, well, how are you doing that and you ain't come to we first? And I'm saying, but hold your horses. When I negotiate with them, I have to pay them. So let me negotiate and work out the deal first. But then I still have to go to them after.
Right.
For them to ultimately say whether or not they could fly here or not. And the answer can be no. And that's a simple example of how restrictive it is to manage items on a fifth schedule without having legal teeth in terms of lawmaking abilities over those areas. We sent down to Parliament since 2019, and I keep using this example over and over again. Since 2019, we sent down to Parliament this bill for us to be able to legislate properly and have teeth behind our policy over the marine parks on the island, including what's happening there in Boko. It never made its way to the Parliament. Although a PNM teacher sent it to a PNM Parliament, they didn't care to carry it to the Parliament floor. But that's a priority for us. Maybe not a priority for the central government. They're busy dealing with crime and big ideas and big issues. They're fighting up with Venezuela and American in who waters and all kind of story. That's not Tobago business. We have simple issues that for us are important to our sustenance, our development, and they get placed on the back burner, sometimes on no burner at all, because they don't make it into the national priority list. And the only way to make Tobago's development agenda priority is by settling the autonomy question. And so I propose something to the government, the new government, because all previous bills from 2013 to present have failed. 2013 was the Kamla bill. Then we had the Orville bill that went down and went to the Parliament in 1.5 different forms, so to speak. That too eventually fizzled away and failed last year. And so I propose two things. One, under the current Act 40 of 1996, there are a few areas of ambiguity that if we clear those up, and the THA, and I mean, the government is talking about now ensuring we get town country planning, etc., etc. We clear those things up, we make those things happen, it gives us a lot more flexibility over our development agenda, and we're able to progress it. And while we do that, we reconsult the people of Tobago about what should be in a new bill to carry before the Parliament, because new bills will have to be carried to the Parliament. And of course, let me be clear from the onset that there are some areas that Tobago will not accept. Tobago will not accept a bill that does not give us power over our maritime space and our ability to utilize such space and exploit resources in such an area. So we're not accepting a bill that doesn't have that in some measure or form. And that's one of the sticking points for us. So I expect those consultations to start soon. Certainly, I am not thinking or seeing that there will be a bill that will come before Parliament and pass before the next election. I don't see that as being a possibility, because there will be need for some consultation to happen. But as I'm saying, while those consultations are happening, we ought to ensure that Act 40 of 1996 is expanded to its fullest and we utilize it to its fullest. Right. For example, Act 40 of 1996 says all businesses being performing in Tobago should pay the taxes for their Tobago business in Tobago. That has never happened.
Right.
Courts and RBC and FCB and Scotiabank, they have never paid a single cent of their tax for Tobago business in Tobago, not 1 cent. All government revenue in Tobago should remain in Tobago. That's the law. But when you pay your speeding ticket, that doesn't remain in Tobago. T.P.P sends your money back to Trinidad. But the law says all government revenue must remain in Tobago.
Right.
It doesn't. So we haven't even been utilizing all of Act 40 of 1996. Yeah. And I'm saying, while we haggle and consult over what the new bills should be, let us expand fully and utilize fully Act 40 of 1996. So it's a two-pronged approach.
All right. So in the past years, and even now, having this conversation with you, we see that Tobago's development has been a major focus, right? If not on the front burner, the burner is now burning brighter. So now we have a question, or a statement rather, coming from the Minority Leader, Mr. Kelvin Morris, stating that the development fund will take a hit of 3.5 million TT dollars. Overall, the 2.94 billion that is supposed to be allocated. So what is your clarity on this? Could you give us some clarity?
Well, the Minority Leader doesn't understand most things. The Minority Leader doesn't even understand how the THA Act works. The Minority Leader doesn't understand how budgeting works in the THA and has worked for donkey years. So let me explain how budgeting works in the THA. In the Tobago House of Assembly, we receive an allocation annually. And I have always complained that not enough money is given on the development side of the budget. We requested 5.90% of the national budget. We got 5%. That means that 0.90% that we asked for, we did not get. Okay. So what we got is a shortfall from what we asked for. So let us start there. So if we got a shortfall from what we asked for, it obviously means that we don't have enough based on what we asked for. There is a hit. No one is denying that. That's obvious. And there was a hit last year, and the year before, and the year before that, and the years before that. What the THA does is that when we sit and we reprioritize, we take from our sum total, and we decide in this fiscal year, this is what we're going to spend on development. So we have 5% of the budget of $5 out of every $100 to be spent in the country in this fiscal year. We are going to sit next week and we are going to decide from that amount how much we are actually going to spend on the development side, how much we will retain on the recurrent expenditure side. And what we do every fiscal year is that we restrict the recurrent, which means that, of course, we can't go and hire everybody.
Right.
Because when we hire everybody, the same people we hire, you know what they complain and say? Well, we're waiting long for the cement truck to come. You know how long we're waiting on materials to arrive? You know why? Because the division is making a decision between paying you your salary and buying those materials. Buying those materials come from the development vote. Paying you your salary comes from the recurrent expenditure side of the budget. So what we do is that we restrict the recurrent side and we spend more on the development side. Yeah. The point is, having 5% of the budget means that we have more fiscal space than we have ever had before. It means that we have more monies that we can move around to priority projects. and to prioritize some of those development works that we want. And know what is interesting is that the minority leader could know that there is a hit on the DP this year, but last year he didn't acknowledge there was a hit on the DP. The year before that, no, the year before that, no, the 10 years before this year, has he ever acknowledged that we had a hit on the DP? And that's hypocrisy. I am saying we have always had a hit on the DP, because when the Minister of Finance doesn't give us all that we ask for, most times what they do is give us what we ask for on the current expenditure side, but not on the development side. And that it is our task, given that the law says the monies must be placed in the fund account of the THA, and then the THA does what it wants with it. It is then our task to then reassign the monies to ensure that the development programs of the island gets funded.
And that would lead us, Chief Sec, to talk about foreign direct investment. You know, it's something we always hear about. And you know, we've been hearing either if the act will be repealed or modified in what way. What can you update us in terms of that act?
Right. So you're talking about, I think you're referencing the Alien Land Holding Act.
Yes.
That act, I think, was introduced by then Prime Minister A.N.R. Robinson and brought significant value to Trinidad and Tobago, particularly to Trinidad, as it encouraged foreign companies to come and invest in Trinidad at a time when the country's income and economy was tanking, just seriously tanking. And for us in Tobago, ill-advisedly, there was this rumor that Germans were buying out Tobago, right? They're owning Tobago. When we look at the data, at no point in our history, the Germans were the #1 buyers of land in Tobago. The #1 buyers of land in Tobago perhaps still is Trinidadians. And guess what? They are citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. So there's nothing in law that can stop them from buying and driving the land prices up. Nothing. Also, we stopped outsiders from purchasing lands in Tobago, but the land values still skyrocketed. Correct. So clearly that did not work as a public policy in managing market prices on the island. And housing is still an elusive dream for many, many young professionals and young people. I could tell you, I'm living it, or I lived it. So the policy now is to remove this thing where the Minister of Finance must grant permission for an outsider, for a foreigner to purchase land in Tobago. Now, for me, that is an oddity in law, and it contravenes our quest for autonomy. But they see that's what P&M does. They always give away autonomy to somebody else. Why do you want a stranger in Trinidad to sit down and decide who could buy land in Tobago? Why is that not being decided by the THA? That should have been the policy in the first place. It shouldn't have been somebody in Trinidad deciding who could buy land over here. It should have been Tobagoans deciding that for ourselves, because we best know the terrain. We best know which areas we would like foreign investment and which areas we want to preserve for indigenous cultures and preserve the environment and so on. No Minister of Finance knows that. And so what has happened over the years is that most requests to the Minister of Finance just went unanswered. No foreign investor is going to wait on a country to take 10 years, 15 years to decide on whether or not I could invest in you. They're not going to wait. They're going to take their money and go elsewhere, which is what constantly happens, because the poor Minister of Finance sit down there afraid to make a decision. He doesn't know the lay of the land. He ain't want nobody to cuss him because he say yes inappropriately. And he's not saying no either. So the application's just there languishing. Right. And I have another fear. If we have a menacing foreign investor, what stops that a foreign investor from passing some money under the table to bribe a single Minister of Finance to say yes? So there are so many possibilities that can go wrong. And I'm saying what should have happened in the first place is what we are seeking to have happen now, which is moving that arrangement to Tobago, and letting Tobagonians decide on really and truly where foreign investment should take place and where it shouldn't take place. That shouldn't be decided by some stranger down in Trinidad. And it should be a clear process where an answer can be had within the space, within a reasonable time frame. It shouldn't be something that takes inordinately long. It's either yes, no. It could never be I don't know.
Right.
Either or.
All right. Could you bring some clarity as well? Now, I'm the person that wants the clarity. Yeah, as well as I think it was PDP leader Watson Duke. He also asked about the contingency plan that you may have should the expenditure not go the way you want it to go. As you said, you'll be focusing a lot on the priorities that need to be addressed with the allocation that was given. So what is the contingency plan should it not go the way you would like it to?
Well, we have been utilizing contingency plans. We just completed a brand new road, 2.2 kilometers going through the Friendship Estate.
Yeah.
We did not have the budget for that. And so we used the design build finance modality, which meant that a company had to come up with $80+ million up front, right? And spend their money up front to get that road done. So that we could have that road, because we just didn't have the budget for it. And then we pay, of course, we have to pay over several years the contractor that did that road. That's just how we work. And that's just one example of utilizing other mechanisms. The court adjudicated on the Milshev issue at the Privy Council. The THA lost that case. That case was ongoing since Orville, London. But to be fair, the Milshev deal was a horrible deal. But again, once Payne makes a deal, it's a horrible deal. So the Milshev deal was a horrible deal. Tobagonians paying an arm and a leg every year. We pay, 20-something million every year for that Milshev. Plus, the Division of Finance have to pay like some $500,000 just for cleaning services. So we can't even hire our own people to make fixes and so on in that building. It was a terrible deal. And not only was that a terrible deal, that was a deal where those lands were had belonged to the THA. Those lands belonged to the THA, as a matter of fact. So those lands belong to us. We leased those lands to the company for small change. The company then went to take a loan on that land, build the property, and then charge us big money to pay for it, when it is our land in the first place. Horrible deal. We are not going to make any of those deals as contingency to the on-budget expenditure. We are going to ensure that the deals are right, that they're transparent, that they're fair, that they make sense, CENTS, to the people of Tobago and to our pockets, because we don't want to put in debt future generations unnecessarily, like what happened with the Milshev issue.
And, you know, we must make way for GMT pretty soon, Chief Secretary Natalya.
Yes.
But we need to ask you, you know, today is our Chief Justice's last day in office as he prepares to retire. And there are people, you know, speculating who may be the next Chief Justice. I don't know if you had time to see some of the names being bandied about, but you have within that lineup 2 females. We have Justice of the Appeals Lucky and Pemberton. We have, I think, Justice of the Appeal Henderson and some other names. What, you have any speculation?
Well, I have no speculations. Whoever they put, we will have to work with.
Yes.
The law doesn't allow for the Chief Secretary to be consulted in the process. The consultation is with the Prime Minister and the opposition leader. In that regard, it's interesting times. I'm not sure if the substantive president is on the seat or if it is Wayne Mark still acting.
I think he's still acting.
Also, all of that is in the mix.
Yes.
As well. So quite interesting political times. But I don't want to miss the opportunity to acknowledge the work of retiring today Chief Justice Ivor Archie, ORTT. Mr. Archie is Tobagonian. If my memory serves me correct, he's the first Tobagonian to become Chief Justice in the country. The youngest Chief Justice we have ever had. The longest serving Chief Justice we have ever had. Mr. Archie was one of our bright bulbs is one of our bright bulbs. When he attended secondary school, I have not heard of people skipping classes in secondary school. I think he spent only 3 years in secondary school. So that should tell you.
Yes,
His acumen spent 3 years in secondary school. Started his career as a petroleum engineer, not in law at all. Was working in the Middle East and all of that. And then came home one day and decided he's going to switch careers into law, and still was able to become a Chief Justice in his 40s. To have 2 huge careers and to switch midstream and still become Chief Justice in your 40s speaks to his ability. He tried his best to modernize the court and to introduce technology into the court system. I think where he had a challenge was treating with how quickly we could move cases out of the docket. And that's a long-standing issue for us. We have significant issues with delayed justice. Too many people in remand yard who is just waiting to get a verdict, which is unfair. It's unfair to lock somebody up and treat them as though they are guilty, and they just can't get a verdict year on year on year on year. So whoever the new Chief Justice is, that is issue number 1 to be solved. I think Trinidad and Tobago have the brightest legal minds in the entire Caribbean, barring none. I actually do think so. And I think we have enough talent in the country that we could find somebody who could do it. And I hope that we are not going to politicize unnecessarily this whole process of getting a new Chief Justice. I hope we won't. I genuinely hope we won't. But I wish Justice Archie, who are TT, all the best on his future endeavors. I spoke to you at a function being held by the Chilean embassy, and I asked him about his future endeavors, and he spoke to me about going into legal education and setting up a framework to train people in good jurisprudence and that kind of thing. And I told him, I said, you need any assistance from Tobago, reach out. We very much view you as a son of the soil, and we will be more than happy to engage and support. In fact, bring your business to Tobago.
That's right.
Because it's just always good to see, and this is a lesson for us as Tobagonians, all the politics aside, who might be PNM and who might be T.P.P and who might be other. Tobago, as the smallest unit in the country, accounting for only about 5.1% of the national population. And that too is one of the justifications the ministry is giving for the budget. Tobago has produced a lot more leaders of states than any other part of the country.
Right.
And I don't know if we give ourselves enough credit for that. Having produced two prime ministers, a president, a Chief Justice, governor of the Central Bank, head of the public service, and so many others. And not just head of the public service once, right? Because we had Doddridge Allen, we had Reginald Dumas, not just even once. We have produced so many bright sparks that were important and are important in the development of Trinidad and Tobago. And I just don't think we give ourselves enough credit for what we have been able to achieve as a small island with a small population, with people who went on farmlands and supported their children from the produce of their lands, people who clean road like my father, or was a checker on the daily rated cadre like my mother, and produced excellence. I don't think we give ourselves enough credit for what we are able to achieve as an island, notwithstanding the resource shortages, notwithstanding how flora devastated our economy, notwithstanding how we were unceremoniously dragged kicking and screaming into a marriage with Trinidad. Historically, we have still been able to produce excellence. Because to me, the hallmark of a Tobagonian is being able to pass through hell and come away with a slice of heaven. That for me is in essence who we are. That's what makes us who we are. And the more we are able to say to our young people that we don't need a life of crime.
Yeah.
You don't need to take your fishing boat and go Venezuela or Colombia or elsewhere to pick up drugs to make it. You could make it right here. You could make it right here. That you could build and build and build and build. Delay the gratification and build and build and build. The more we show our young people examples of Tobagonians who have made it up and out without half of what we have today, I think the more we get our young people to realize that we're not so bad after all, and that over the last 44, almost 45, will be 45 years this year, for the modern THA, this year we'll be celebrating, 200 years? 200 years of the Assembly legislature, having a parliament in Tobago. We have done damn good for ourselves. And sometimes it's good to stop, pause, look over all the years, even the years run by the people we didn't vote for, we didn't support, and say we have done well for ourselves collectively. And we could do better. And the aim is always to do better. You will never hear me come here as a chief secretary or even as just a political leader in this space and ever suggest that we have done enough. Because for me, with all the good work, it is never enough. There is always more to be done. There's always more to be done. And this is what even this election season is about. Getting to do more, getting to expand beyond where we are. And I'm just so grateful for the privilege of being Tobagonian. I don't think there's nothing in the world that supersedes being a Tobagonian.
I think we're sharing that same passion this morning here, Natalie.
Yes.
All right. But of course, at 8:17 this morning, our chief sec has taken us into the working day. So for those of you who are still with us, Player Flow and Digicel this morning, I really do wish you a good day. That good day goes out to our Chief Secretary, Farley Augustine, and thanking him so much for being with us here on Tobago Updates. Natalie, thank you so much for joining me as well.
It was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure having a young at heart with me here on the morning show. And of course, we continue on with our hot seat. But in order to do that, in order to see who sits there next, you have to stay tuned for our Good Morning Tobago show with Renessa Ortiz this morning. But before we go, I just want to encourage you all to share the live, share the live, share the live.